So modalities are different types of sensory information. The modalities we learn for learning new motor skills are sight, sound, and proprioception, or sensing where your body is in space. For the purposes of this discussion, sound's going to be broken up into reading and writing, and auditory or hearing. And this agrees with the fact that these pieces of information are processed in different parts of the brain, and different people have relative strengths for how they use it. So you may ask, why do modalities matter for learning motor skills? Aren't we just going to go through it anyways? And the answer is most people have strengths and weaknesses with how they can use different pieces of sensory information. This has absolutely nothing to do with intelligence. So some people are going to have difficulty recreating a particular action or creating a visual mental representation based on words alone. Other people only think in pictures and don't have a mental dialogue at all. So if information is only presented in one way, using a single modality, your students are going to have different degrees to which they can use that information. Some may need additional time to translate it into a sense that they can understand and utilize better. So this might manifest as having students who have difficulty learning from a book, but do well when they have somebody explaining it to them and can answer questions. Or maybe students who understand it much better once they've seen it, either a video or a demonstration. So you can take a test to learn for yourself your preferred learning modality at vark-learn.com. So what does learning look like for the different modalities? Well, if you're a visual learner, you want to see information as pictures, charts, a demonstration of somebody doing it, or seeing yourself through a video or a mirror. Auditory learners love discussion, talking through an idea, talking to an expert, getting a chance to ask questions. Reading and writing learners prefer lists to organize ideas, and they do well with text-based homework, reading manuals, online articles, or participating in discussion groups. And finally, kinesthetic learners need to be hands-on. So they often utilize proprioception for building motor skills, and they learn best through experience and practice, doing it for yourself, going through the actions, and utilizing trial and error. Students who know how they learn are now empowered to know what to ask from instructors. You can use help phrases to help guide the type of information that you need. Visual learners might say, "Show me." Auditory learners might say, "Explain it to me." Reading and writing learners might ask, "Where can I learn more about this?" And kinesthetic learners might use the phrase, "Walk me through this," to say, "I need to do the action." So once you have that ability, you can also seek out instructors who are comfortable explaining information in the modality you learn best through. You can also use this to find resources to learn on your own time, and this might include YouTube channels, manuals, online discussion groups, or drilling at home. So instructors should keep in mind that for every modality you're weak in, you're going to have students where that's their preferred form of learning. Recognize this. It may also be useful to ask students their preferred mode of learning, and if they don't know, cycle through a couple of different options and see what sticks. Third, learning reaches the most students in a mixed group if you're incorporating multiple modalities. For instance, when you design your lesson plan, you might start off with objectives and an outline of what the class will be. And then you might show examples from a period manual where they can come back and read more later. And then you might demonstrate the technique and have them drill it, which is kinesthetic. And then finally, you'll give time at the end for questions and discussion. And so this is a way of reinforcing the lesson using all four modalities. 4. One way that we teach is actually a powerful multimodal tool, and that would be show one, do one, teach one. So in the show phase, you show the student what it looks like, you demonstrate it, give background information they need to understand the technique, and in do one, the student tries it for themselves. They repeat it until it's comfortable, consistent with instructor guidance and feedback. At this point that you would have question and answers as need be. And then the student would go ahead and teach one. So, they would either teach the technique back to the instructor and get guidance and feedback, or to a different student, again, getting guidance and feedback. So together, these steps are helping to reinforce multiple modalities. See one is visual, do one is kinesthetic, teach one is auditory. And if you want to round it out, you can give them something to read up on regarding the technique later, or have them write you a quick note afterwards to say how it went. So instructors can leverage different modalities as part of debriefing exercises. So this is where the student critically examines what they learned, and this is a process that lets them go over the information using modalities that are most comfortable for them and continue learning afterwards. So this really helps with memory consolidation, or the ability to file it away long term, as well as recall, or using the task in the future. So a visual learner might benefit from going back to the source material, showing an example of plates from Capifera and Giganti, for instance, if you went over the appropriate way to stand. Show what those examples look like. And as a bonus, you're critically examining by comparing and contrasting. Visual learners also do well with demonstrating permutations. So for instance, you go over a simple Giganti dagger play. You might ask the student to conceptualize, what are the similarities and differences if they're defending against a shot to a different part of the body. Auditory learners do really well with discussing what they learned. So for instance, if you demonstrated how you extend in a second to parry a shot that is going to the outside, you might ask them questions such as, what is the strong of the blade or the forte? How are you using the forte in this technique? Why do you extend when you do it? What would be different if the blade was low or high? Or you can simplify and to say, tell me what you learned and why it works. Reading and writing students might benefit from having a journal in their bag. So the chance to sit down and write what they learned before they leave the lesson. This can also be useful for the instructor writing down resources for them to look into in the future, or giving words of encouragement. Reading and writing students also do well with research homework. So for instance, you go over concepts of leverage and how they apply to gaining the blade. You might send them off with the charge to go read some articles on the subject, maybe by Sean Franklin. And kinesthetic learners do well with demonstrating what they learned to somebody else. So if you just corrected a student's lunge, you might have them demonstrate the lunge and explain what they're doing and why it matters to a different student. And so this is activating the muscle groups and getting them to think about, how this should feel and why it needs to be this way. Really helps with long-term memory. And finally, kinesthetic learners do well with being asked, how are you going to use this? So visualizing the context that they're going to use this technique in. So for instance, you demonstrate how to block against a particular type of shot. You might ask them, who are you going to use this against? And so that gets the student visualizing and thinking about what's going to happen in the fight leading up to this technique, so they can use it then in context later. So in summary, we all have preferred ways that we'd like to learn. And these fall into 4 sensory modalities: visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic. There are numerous ways to incorporate it into your lesson plans, and it's already part of a form of active learning we use a lot, which is show one, do one, teach one. And some really easy ways to incorporate different modalities into your teaching is to utilize debriefing exercises, or ways of examining what was learned after the lesson. Thanks for listening.